if you're making content to sell other content, so you're making a promo or a commercial or a film, or even if you're maybe designing an advert for a newspaper or whatever, you're working on some print, you've got to put your head inside that of your target demographic, and I think that's absolutely key. And I think the biggest mistake one can make as a creative is you make something for yourself. And
G'day team, Simon here from the Feel Good Blueprint. I hope you're doing safe and well. Welcome to episode 12 of, well, not so isolation in select interviews. As time goes on and many countries start to open up to some level of normalcy, some countries, I'm thinking about changing the name. So if you've got any ideas, jump on my Facebook or Instagram pages at the Feel Good Blueprint, send me a message to what we could change it to. The whole idea of the Feel Good Blueprint is to bring together a community of like-minded people to talk about ideas, tools and resources to help others find their great. If you've ever watched television before, there's every chance you've seen a show that my next guest has either worked on or contributed to. Now my next guest is Mr. Steve Miller. Now Steve is a prominent leader within film and television across creative and production. He's worked for some huge iconic brands like ITV, Disney and ESPN, just to name a few. Steve's travelled around the globe working with some of these huge brands to help them increase their viewership and subscriptions, their branding and everything in between. In this episode, Steve and I discuss the film and television and broadcasting industry, how that is rapidly changing, what great branding looks like, how to get more subscribers and viewers, ideas for better leadership, and some of the experiences Steve's had around the world. Big thanks for Steve for jumping on the podcast. He's a really generous and fun guy, and like we said in the podcast, looking forward to catching up again when lockdown eases. And again, I hope you enjoy this episode. Okay, I'm very excited to be joined today to the Feel Good Blueprint by a good friend of mine. He is a creative director. He's a leader and branding expert in media. He's worked for some of the most iconic networks and TV brands. He's a BAFTA full voting jury member, and the audience has likely seen a TV show or network that Steve's been behind. I'd like to welcome Mr. Steve Miller.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here. Yes, hope I can answer some of your questions. And let's go.
I'm very pleased to have a chat with you in any case, because we haven't caught up since our Christmas drinks, and for obvious reasons. Speaking with you virtually when you're just over the way in London is a bit funny, but that's how we've been doing things. Steve, you and I met. I'm going to say it was a good 5 to 6 years ago, volunteering for the group Reach Out, which is that charity based in London, helping young people make better decisions. And that's where we first kicked off our friendship, and we've never looked back.
No, absolutely not. No. That was a great experience. I learned so much and thoroughly enjoyed it. Met some fabulous people.
Great organization. Now, Steve, I thought I'd start with, if we could ask a bit of a background on yourself.
Sure. So I guess, so I've been working in broadcast for, nearly 23 years now is roughly a sort of at a professional level. I did do a film degree in Edinburgh at Napier University before that. Before that, I did tinker with doing some TV bits and bobs, but that really got me into doing the degree, and then subsequently getting work, sort of full-time work in the industry. So during that time, I have had to do a lot of traveling really for work, and so been based in Hong Kong, Singapore, also Dublin, Amsterdam, more recently Munich, Istanbul, and Doha, of course London as well, which I've probably done the most of my work in London, but I've had to spend serious time out of London too, which has really been, I think, a fantastic experience and allowed me to grow as a professional and an individual, as a person. So So those really starting off was, you know, an assistant producer, and then or associate producer, as they used to be called, and then a producer, and then really since a creative director for the last, probably since about 1999, 2000 maybe. Creative director, working in Amsterdam for UPC, and then for Disney at ESPN for 12 years as creative director, running EMEA, Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. So, and then subsequently keep at that sort of stage. So doing branding, creative, running, heading up a creative team, and trying to work with that team to pull out the best of them and promote the particular brand.
Yeah, very, very impressive CV. You know, some of the brands I've got down here, which are just some of the top ones, is, you know, Disney, ESPN, ITV, Al Jazeera, TRT, Max Dome. And I think, like, one of the first things I want to dive into, I'm really interested in, is around, you know, building an audience, you know, increasing viewers and subscribers. Where do you all begin with that? You know, you're competing with viewership. How do you sort of win?
Well, I mean, I guess for starters, you know, brand is an important thing. I mean, how we perceive a brand. So whether it be Coca-Cola, or if we, I mean, let's stick maybe with the media, whether if you're a newspaper, or whether you're you know, a broadcast brand such as Sky, or a channel such as you know, BBC or ITV. Well, Sky, BBC is much bigger, of course, with iPlayer and so on. But you know, these things are now sort of very much interchangeable, because a lot of these things used to be channels and now they're not. Now they have streaming, they'll have, you know, iPlayer, or ITV will have the equivalent, Sky of course has the equivalent, and so on. So it's all a bit of a muddle at the moment. So I guess going back to try and answering the question that you asked is how does one stand out? So first of all, you've got to have something that people want. I mean, you know, there's this expression has been around for years, which is, you know, content is king. Now, it's a massive cliche, but it's true. You know, people want to watch the Premier League, the English Premier League, arguably the best football league in the world. I believe it is, but that's clearly debatable. I'm sure the Spanish and the Germans and the French and the Italians might argue with the Brazilians. The Argentinians, but you know, it's definitely up there, let's face it, because it attracts the biggest players from all those countries. So you've got to have products that people want, for starters, whether it be sport, whether it be movies, whether it be documentaries. So that's key. And then attaching a brand to those products. I mean, I think Sky have done a fantastic job, and you know, in the UK with their coverage of the Premier League. I mean, you know, Sky Sports is very synonymous in the UK with the coverage of the Premier League. There's good reasons, but I mean, they have been behind, you know, they've worked hand in hand with the EPL to develop it, to look at, you know, introducing things like, you know, high def, and now 4K, and you know, improving audio, improving camera techniques, and doing all sorts of improving the graphics. You know, also their analytical shows and so on. So it's all that, we're trying to intertwine a kind of brand with content. And of course, we've come full circle in a strange way now. You know, these brands are creating content. So you look at Netflix, you know, Sky. You know, Sky's just had what's the Gangs of London, which is the producer, which I very much enjoyed. So, you know, Netflix has got a plethora of fantastic material it's been behind producing. So it's interesting to see how these brands are now, you know, they're going out and they're saying, hey, our audience want this, so we're going to make it. And so it's even kind of going the other way, really, if that makes sense. So it's exciting times for the viewer, because I think there's more content out there. With, of course, I've left Amazon out, but I should certainly not. They're big players, and you know, producing some great content. As well, and even, you know, stealing content off the BBC. Well, stealing's not the right word, forgive me. You know, outbidding. So, you know, look at Top Gear, which has become, what's it, the Grand Tour, I think, which is, you know, so they're big players, very powerful players in the market. So, yeah, content, and then you know, you've got to try. You want quality associated with your brand. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. No, it does make a lot of sense. I even saw an interview with the new Discovery Channel CEO, and to see that they're actually behind the rest of the competition at the moment, and they're looking to catch up with the video on demand subscription model. I find it fascinating. So I was really excited to ask you about that. And then,
Yeah.
yeah, please.
No,
You're
no,
gonna
no,
say
no.
something.
It's the way forward. It's changed so dramatically. I mean,
Mm,
I mean, if you look at what does one need to see live, I mean, truly live. I mean, really, in 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 my opinion, it's of course sport. You want to watch sport live. You know, you don't.
mhm.
Look, you can see it with a delay, but you know, what if one of your mates phones up with a score? It's gonna, you know, it will destroy you. So you got to watch sport live. Let's face it. News, of course, you want to see news content live. This is essential. And then there's the sort of the Big Brothers type sort of event programming, such as Big Brother, etc., which you know is nothing I've really ventured into working on, but it's definitely gets the figures in. So whether it's, you know, Dancing on Ice, Big Brother, all these event shows, you know, that they require live. But apart from that, nothing else needs to be live.
Yeah,
Why do you want to watch anything else live? You don't need to.
no. And then there's I guess the viewing experience, wanting that shared viewing experience as well. But you can kind
Well,
of do that virtually now.
that's it. I mean, I do remember having a chat with some of the guys who have been working on the Walking Dead, and I said, well, why do you watch? You know, why does this need to be watched live? But all the kids were it was a shared live experience, so they were all you know, texting, etc., while it was on live. I mean, so there is something I've missed out there. It's that shared experience of watching something when it's new, the latest episode of something. But does it need to be live? I don't know. I don't think so. I think, you know, that's the great thing these days.
Yeah, it's really interesting that, like you said, it's a muddle of what's happening at the moment. And when it comes to these brands competing, you've mentioned a lot around, you know, how they're creating content's king. The creative process. What happens behind the camera that people don't see around being, you know, the creative teams coming together and creating new content?
Well, I think I mean, now we have. I mean, I guess at one point it was getting data on who was watching what and how many. You know, it was very hard, particularly in Britain. We have Barb, which is a tiny little slither of a view of a section of the British audience about what they were watching, and a lot of these niche channels were so small that they didn't register, so nobody could get any data on how their channels are being consumed. Nowadays that's all changed, of course, with the event of IPTV and you know, and so on. So we have, you know, there's this huge KPI data, and you know, people know what's being watched. So I think that is, first of all, that gives such good feedback to, I mean, the creatives, but also the marketeers who work hand in hand with the creatives, who can actually steer the creatives and say, look, you know, this is the demographic that maybe we're losing slightly, and you know, or maybe we should, you know, we want to make some particular promos and commercials that are actually going to encourage this demographic to come in and watch this content because we believe they'll like it. However, they just aren't really, we haven't maybe chosen to market them yet, or they haven't quite bought into it yet. So I think the event of KPIs, and one of our lovely mentees from Reach Out was heavily involved in that, Patrick. So you know, that's become a huge industry, which I cannot pretend to know a lot about. I know the very basics, but there's a whole media metrics and so on. Are, you know, all this data is incredibly valuable, and as we know about Cambridge Analytica and now faculty, which yes, certain political parties are using to try and yes, let's move on, shall we?
I know you're very passionate about that as well. So you've been around the world, Steve. You know, I think I'm very impressed at, you know, that some of the places you've been able to work, and it's inspirational for me, particular. You know, you've been
Likewise,
basically
I'm
around
glad
the.
you're over here. Yes.
Yeah, well, trying to, but it's even better when I suppose you get paid to do it as well. And When it comes to, being around the globe and the places you've worked, what are some of your standout places you've been, some of those experiences?
You know what? Everywhere I've had the pleasure to be has given me, you know, so much insight into so many different things that I never thought I would gain. I mean, I've recently come back from doing a contract for Al Jazeera, and I'd never been to Doha. In fact, I'd never been to the Middle East, and I had the most fantastic time. And Al Jazeera really is a top-notch operation, and it was a real pleasure to work with those guys. And you know, I hope we might work again together. But they were really a phenomenal operation, and but just to visit the parts of the world that, I mean, previous to that, I was in Istanbul for 18 months. Now, if one hasn't been to Istanbul, you've got to go to Istanbul.
Mm-hmm.
I can so recommend it, just from food, culture, museums, history. Constantinople, this vast metropolis of a city. But I think, for me, I think traveling, yes, the old cliche, broadens the mind hugely, but I think it gives you, you know, you get treated, you know, you're a foreigner there, so you see a lot of, you know, you get treated, you can see when the locals treat you well and when they don't treat you well, and that's very good for when you come home, because you know, you retain that knowledge in your head, and you know how to treat people that you know, that maybe are new immigrants to Britain, and you respect them, and so I think all these traveling is something that all these experiences you can carry with you, and make you bigger and stronger, and you know, really, it's I wish everybody could experience, you know, experience a lot of traveling, because it really, I think it broadens the mind, and yeah, it's phenomenal to spend time in these places, really, from Hong Kong, Singapore. I mean, Amsterdam I loved, of course, but who doesn't love Amsterdam? Okay, it rains a little bit, but what a great city. Dublin, another superb city, but I think Istanbul's still going to stand out as one of the most, yeah, beautiful cities. Beautiful cities. I've had the pleasure of working and living in, thanks to TRT, who employed me there, which another great bunch.
Yeah, I recall the last two places you've had assignments at, because that's in the time frame I've known you. Was it in Istanbul that there was a precarious moment as well, I think, that was going on when you were there? Was that in Istanbul, or was that in
Yeah,
Qatar?
I mean, Istanbul had, you know, numerous there was terrorist attacks when I was there, which is you know, really is, you know, I mean, don't forget. I mean, I grew up in the UK, and we've had terrorism in the UK. It was throughout
Mm.
my childhood with the IRA, which you know, really, thanks to some good politicians, you know, that situation was greatly improved, and long may it stay that way, and improve further. Though Brexit is terrifying on that front, what damage it could possibly do to that, and let's hope it doesn't. But I think, you know, I've been growing up with that, but seeing it again in Turkey has been, you know, really, it's you know, you forget what it's like when just you know, wandering around when, you know, police all are armed to the teeth, and you know, there's essentially tanks on the streets and so on and so forth. It's something I think we are so privileged in, you know, in certain countries, in the UK and Australia, and you know, in Europe. And we know the US is going through a tough time at the moment, and that's a huge subject. But you know, we're very lucky here. We you know, we take certain things, free speech, you know, and you know, we take all this for granted. But it's not everywhere on the planet.
Yeah, no, that's really well said, Steve. I agree, and it's some really crazy things unfolding at the moment, which we might get to a bit later. Now, the cross-cultural experience that you had, you know, when I think about that, and I think about audiences, I'd like to ask you about, what's your experience with different global audiences? What have you seen that really stands out for what they want to see?
Well, that's interesting, because I think it's something that, you know, if you are if you're making content to sell other content, so you're making a promo or a commercial or a film, or even if you're maybe designing an advert for a newspaper or whatever, you're working on some print, you've got to put your head inside that of your target demographic, and I think that's absolutely key. And I think the biggest mistake one can make as a creative is you make something for yourself, and much of that's great fun. It's sometimes it can hit the target because that audience can be you and the demographic similar to yourself, but most of the time it's not. So I think the key that comes with maturity and really sort of, you've got to have that empathy to be able to understand your target demographic, and that can be, it can be, you could be making it could be for content that you don't like, or could be for kids content, for instance, and how do you make some content? How do you brand a kids TV? So you've got to try and put yourself in their mindset, and the same, of course, for parts of the world. I mean, I'm a football fan. I'm not really a rugby fan. Yes, I've been to rugby and I do enjoy it. It's a fantastic game and the atmosphere is wonderful. I know, but football's where my passion is, and I've cut many rugby promos, and I've got to put myself in the mind of a rugby fans. And I think, but that times different factors, being French, Italian, if it depends at the target markets that you're going to, old, young, depends really. Yeah, depends where. Yeah, you've got to identify who that target market is. I think that's vital.
Yeah, it's a really good reminder, especially even for what I'm doing with this small operation. I'm literally broadcasting as a at home operation, but thinking about what the audience wants and thinking about what do they want, not always what sort of I want, or there's obviously interest levels that you have for yourself, but I suppose from a commercial perspective, it's very different. And the leadership side of things, you've really built and worked with some great teams, and you've told me many stories about some of the things you've achieved as well. It's something that I guess you could say is your bread and butter as well. What have you seen in leadership that really works in your industry, and what doesn't work?
Leadership is do you know what, people are the toughest thing. I mean, if you just went off and made some TV on your own, great, it's fine. People are inherently difficult, and managing people is difficult. There's no two other ways about it. Some people need 20 minutes every day of managing and so on, and encouragement. Some people need 20 minutes a week. So I think and trust me, I made my errors in my early days of management, and unfortunately, some of the guys who worked for me had to help me through those times, and they were the lessons that I learned in management. I learned through probably making mistakes, and unfortunately, they were the subjects that I made the mistakes on, so to speak. But it's a trial and error thing. But I think the one thing I retain from management is you need to, don't have too many people reporting into you. It's vital. I mean, really, you want anything between three and six, no more. Even 6 is kind of mad, but that's really what you want, between 3 and 6, so you can give everybody enough time, and then tailor your management for that individual to that individual. And as I was trying to say earlier, is some people need that 20 minutes every day, some people need a bit of TLC, and some people don't. Some people need, they need a kick up the backside, and it's carrot and stick, and you've got to find what works for that individual. And once you do, it will pay dividends. But do not treat them all the same. Yes, they've got to be treated the same in a legal sense and in a professional sense, but when it's talking about your attitude to them, you've got to tailor that to specifically. So you've got to understand what motivates them. Do they need lots of feedback? Do they really listen? And so on and so forth. So I think it's, some people might need a brief written out, so everything's on paper. Somebody you can just sit in a meeting for 10 minutes and they'll write it all down, and they've got it. So it's doing, getting to know those people that work, because they're the guys that they're you, they're representing you and the company, and it's so vital that you have a good relationship with them. And look, you're not going to like them all, and they're not all going to like you, and that's for sure. And I can guarantee you that. And there'll be some you really like, and there'll be some that you really don't like. However, that's what I mean. You got to treat everybody equal. But and that's essential. But you got to try and find the ways to communicate, the manner of communicating to each one individually in the best way. That's my personal opinion. I don't know if that's shared by other people, but I found that for managing people for 20 years, that's what's really worked best for me, when I've sort of found how I could light everybody up individually and make them communicate with them best.
Yeah, great advice. And then a bit of hopefully magic as well from yourself here. I'm very interested to understand, what's been, I suppose, the real basis of you being able to be successful, for you to be able to sort of climb through the ranks. What has been some key things you've done to ensure your success in the industry?
Well, that's an interesting one. I mean, I think we've just talked about managing down. There's a lot of, you have to manage up as well in the world, and you have to manage your boss. And look, as I said earlier, you like some people that work for you, and you don't like others. It's the same with your boss. Sometimes you got a smashing boss that you just click with. And then you have the boss that's the boss from hell. And and let's face it, we've all worked for bullies. We've worked for abusive bosses, most of us, and we've worked for fantastic bosses with empathy, and who understand when you're having an off day, or you're having an on day, or give you the encouragement you need, and or maybe give you the budget you need for a project or something. So they know what you're trying to achieve. But I think managing up, I think, is crucial. And I think some demographics are better than others. I mean, I think I always, in various places I've worked, I think Americans are very good at managing up, and it's a lot about is what you're perceived to be doing, and maybe that can actually overtake what's actually being done. That's my experience, I think, in a big corporate world. It's been my experience. It's maybe not everybody's experience, but I think getting to know what your boss wants, and what the company further needs, I think is crucial. And then your boss's boss as well, because that's make your boss look good, and it's but also share the credit. And I think that's going back to what I said before, is gotta give your staff the credit.
Mm-hmm.
Because you know what, you give your staff the credit, it comes back to you just by default. Mm-hmm. So don't take the credit, share the credit, give the credit. Say, hey, it's my team did this, and it comes back to you. And I think that's a vital thing. I think really, yeah, that's so vital. Don't have an ego. Send the credit down to those that actually did the hard work. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, really, really useful, and great to hear that some of those things, some of those fundamentals, are just so important to do. And we were talking a bit around the production piece. I wanted to speak to the part we're talking about, great content, and the appetite for content, how it's changing. We talked about the subscription models and video on demand for Netflix, Disney, and everyone else. You've worked on these as well, I know. But then we're seeing broadcasters at a new level, like your at-home broadcasters that are on YouTube, for example, that are becoming these sort of really big players, commercially as well. Someone like Joe Rogan or whoever that be. And it's like you said, it's a really interesting mishmash at the moment. What do you think sort of the future will be of all of this?
No, I think this is amazing. I think this is so when I was young, and I'm sure people of my age will understand, if you wanted to make TV, it was virtually impossible, because even to rent a video camera was £300 a day, and then you needed an edit suite and so on and so forth. And then slowly there was VHS camcorders and so on, but still you couldn't make anything broadcast on that. There was Super 8 films and so on. So really with the event of even when DV video cameras came out, and you could edit them on your laptop, I thought that was phenomenal, because it gave everybody the opportunity to make TV. Everybody. So it wasn't just an elite who had the ability to use certain kit or access to certain kit could do it. It meant everybody. I mean, a bit like, I guess, photography and then desktop publishing. All these things went away when the technology improved. It gave the ability of the masses to do it. Now, I think this is phenomenal, and I think once we had, we've got kids which have a phone at home or a laptop at home, and they can pretty much do what an edit, a £1 million edit suite could do, 20 years ago, and they can do it on their laptop or just their phone. I think it's amazing. So I think, for starters, I think it means the talent pool is not just reduced to this elite pool that have access to the kit, or have access to money, or manage to get into the BBC, etc. It puts it in the public domain, which is so vital, because I think we want everybody to have, anybody who's got talent in film, TV, which what we're discussing broadcast at the moment, but of course in other fields, need to get access to it. So I love the fact that that's there, and so that the actual making of the content is much easier. But also now, of course, the distribution of the content is much easier with the likes of YouTube channels, etc., which is I think as important, because you want to make stuff, but you want to get people to view it, and whether it ends up being on Instagram or Facebook, etc. I think it's shared, and and occasionally, we all see these little videos, and there's something genius about them, and that it's been done by somebody in their bedroom, and he's extremely talented, and it's brilliant, and it's those people we want to bring into the broadcast industry, and I call it the broadcast industry, but you know what I mean, across the board. It's so I just, it's phenomenal, and I wish it happened sooner. Wish it happened when I was young, but it's here now, and that's so we want to share things. I mean, we're talking about George Floyd. I mean, that came out because it was shared and everybody saw it, and it was a horrific thing to watch. And I know a lot of people have chosen not to watch it, and I don't blame them, because it is horrific. But the fact that was shared was due to this distribution network that we have, and the world's disgusted by it, absolutely disgusted, and and rightly so, and yeah, I mean that's where things are working, but there's a lot of things broken as well, which that's a topic for another discussion.
Yeah, I want to talk about it anyway. I think especially because from a live broadcast perspective, like we just spoke to, is this live broadcasting model from people's mobile phones, that it's just an unbelievable explosion of content out there. You can go onto any platform, and you've got multiple live streaming coming from each of the cities in the US. What's happening at the moment? Just before I was speaking to you, I saw looting after looting that's going on, and just an area I want to touch on around you see what's there in the live streaming piece, but then there's still polarizing views. There's this misinformation, disinformation that is produced by a range of different sources of media, and on such a non-polarizing matter like this. I know you and I share a very similar view, like people should, on this matter, but yet there still remains to be an opposition to it. What's the dangers, and how do you see this whole thing around fake news and misinformation playing out?
Well, this is so pertinent nowadays, and if I mean, mean, Trump's obsessed by fake news, but the amount of BS that comes out of his mouth is you know, I mean, have a look in the mirror, big man. I mean, it is staggering. I mean, I think to make up one's own mind, you need to be looking at multiple sources of information, and you know, and that's, you know, that really stretches from, you know, the broadsheets to the tabloids to, I mean, really, and understand why certain purveyors of media are giving you certain messages, and then you can read the messages behind it. And the fact is, it's the only way you can get a full picture. If you look at, you know, you're looking at the Daily Mail, the Guardian. I'm talking about the UK here, the Telegraph, the Sun. You know, you can really, you know, I mean, look at, you know, the Spectator, you know, the Economist. I mean, you look at all these publications, and you can see that, you know, why they are saying certain things, and of course they have a bias. Of course they do, because they're funded by you know, X, Y, and Z, and that you know, that's how they keep their funding. So it's got to get to the stage where it is at the stage where you have to consume so much media to get the full picture, and then I think you have to draw the conclusions yourself. You know, I think you know, I think that's when it's good to have a good circle of friends on Facebook, and you know, people can pull information that maybe you know, you might not have found yourself, and share it, and so on. But you know, yes, you're right, it is terrifying, because you know, if you know, look at the money behind all different publications and so on. There's clearly, you know, they have shareholders to keep happy, and owners to keep happy, and so on and so forth. So yeah, big subject, that, yeah, huge.
Really big one. Thanks for your comment on that. It's yeah, we'll see it. I guess we'll see it continue to unfold as well in what is a crazy year so far. And I'll kind of just jump back just a little bit for anyone that's really aspiring to be within media, to be within producing, to be within TV and broadcasting, or any of those areas. What's some great advice you might have for anyone starting up, what they can do to start to get into it, or to start to get ahead in the industry?
I think, look, as I was just saying, I think the thing is, the key thing is to start to understand the language of, you know, moving image, you know, and whether it be for a phone, whether it be for TV, whether it be for a cinema, and by that I mean, you know, shooting, filming, whether it's with a phone, whether it's with a video camera, or whatever, then editing, understanding sound, understand the language behind it, understand what you need to do to build a story and make that effective. And once you've understood that, you know, I think that can be taught at universities, but I think a lot of us, you know, have learned that through watching film and TV, and get it. You know, I would say, you know, go out and make your own stuff. Go out and make your own stuff. Yeah, try and do, if you want to go via education, there's courses, or you want to apply for internships of various channels. Yes, but I think if you want to get into an internship, I want to see a show reel, and I want to see a show reel, and the show reel says a lot. So I think you got to make that show reel, and even if that show reel is just little amateur films that you've made, you know, around your neighborhood or whatever, that's fine. You know, because you know, it's you want to see what somebody is capable of, and you want to see their enthusiasm, and you want to see their understanding, as I said, of the language that you know, that to tell the story. So it's those parts that make up the story. So yeah, I mean, I know it's probably difficult to get into, but I mean, I think, look, I don't think it's any more difficult than being a lawyer, than going into being a lawyer, to be a doctor, to you know, to working in marketing, to, you know, really. But yeah, I think you got to want it, but I think that's for across the board. You know, if you want to be a professional footballer, or you want to be you know, an actor or a singer or whatever, it's you know, you got to apply yourself, take risks.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay, great. And then when it comes to, you know, the last sort of, I suppose, 3 to 6 months, what have you been up to, and how have you been sort of recharging the batteries?
Well, recharging the batteries is well, it's like hanging out with yourself at the Golden Heart. So every now and again, it has been difficult. Look, you know, I mean, I'm a social animal. I have luckily, I have a great circle of friends, and I think it's. I, to be honest, though, I have enjoyed. I mean, as you well know, I spent a lot of time. I spent months and months abroad, away at a time, abroad working. So it's great to be at home, and to be here with my wife and my dog, and spend time here. And I have enjoyed it, particularly at the start of the first couple of months. I thought, hey, this isn't too bad. I'm doing a lot of cooking, doing all the cooking because my wife's very busy working from home, which is a pleasure. So I've enjoyed it, but I think it's got to the stage where I think we all need our friends, and I think friends, you forget what role friends play, from just as sort of you're sort of psychologists, and you can just unload on your friends, and you have that chat in the pub, and you both moan about what's going on in your life. But yes, it does. It's crucial. It makes you feel better, and then somebody will say, "Hey, have you tried this?" No, I'm going to do that, and and it's getting advice from friends and stuff. And yeah, we can do that through Zoom, but it's you want to be with somebody, and I want to share a glass of wine with somebody, or a nice craft beer from Bermondsey somewhere. That's what we want. Letting the hair down has been a challenge, even though this is why I'm wearing a hat, because my hair is particularly let down at the moment. I need a haircut, but we'll think, I think it shows that we need people. We all need people. I know some people need them less than others. Some people can survive on their own more, but I miss my friends. I miss you, my friend, and I miss a lot of my other friends. So it's tough. I tell you what, I've watched a lot of movies, and read a lot of books, and cooked a lot of food.
Yeah, miss you too, Steve. It's you're such a great guy, especially when you get to see you in person, and you're the host with the most. You've taken me to a couple of football matches, and we've been to a few lovely dining venues as well in London.
Missing the football.
Yeah, 100%. Great. And then for people that want to check you out, is there anywhere they can go to check out you and your work?
I guess I'm just on LinkedIn. I think I am the one and only Steve Miller.
The one and only Steve Miller. There's only one.
Yeah, well, I think it was the only thing that was left.
Yeah,
Steve Miller associated to it, but yes, the one and only Steve Miller.
And I'm sure if people have seen any TV, that they've probably seen something you've worked on anyway.
Well, been involved with. I mean,
been involved with. Yeah.
Don't forget, TV is this operation that requires so many people, which is what makes it frustrating, but what makes it amazing. All these projects require tens or hundreds of people to get involved, and you play a little part, but so does everybody else, and that's when it's the final. It's not like taking a photograph where it's just you and then you print it and it's there. It's a team effort. Cliche, but it's very true.
Yeah. And I thought I'd finish on a note with a final question for you, Steve. What does the world need less of right now?
Prejudice. Simple.
Straight up.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how it is.
The stuff that's going on is...
Yeah, it's crazy. Very good, Steve Miller. I appreciate you coming on the Feel Good Blueprint. Always appreciate your time. You're a champion, and it's been lovely speaking to you.
Really enjoyed it, and all the best to all your subscribers and viewers, and thanks for spending time to listen to me ranting on. Thank you.
It's been great. Cheers. There you have it, my episode with Steve Miller. I hope you enjoyed it and got something out of it. Now, if you have any feedback, want to jump on the podcast, or got any queries, you can always hit me up at thefeelgoodblueprint@gmail.com. Thanks again.